This is the California Working Families podcast, news you can use and tools to act. Each episode will be a quick primer on important topics to working families, headlines that hit your paycheck, and a deeper conversation with the people doing the work. I'm Jane Kim, California Director with Working Families Party, and we believe government can actually represent all of us and that we can make this happen together. We're relatively new in California, and we've already elected more than 100 candidates across the state, from school board to state legislature, from San Diego to Sacramento. So for our first episode, we're discussing an issue that has put California at the center of the national news, an unexpected sprint to redraw congressional maps ahead of November 2026. And we have two guests joining us today to discuss this topic. So we're trying on some new things, learning as we go along, and we want you to be a part of it. So don't hesitate to give us ideas or feedback at California Working Families Party on Instagram. Now for our first guest. Welcome to California Working Families Party's first podcast. And today's episode is going to be on a topic that has been grabbing national headlines, which is redistricting. So Trump, in all his wisdom, has realized that he is probably not going to win back the House with Republicans next year. So he called up his friend, Governor Abbott in Texas, and asked him to redraw the congressional district lines to net him at least 5 new Republican districts. Now, California, the other large state and the other large blue state, has decided that we shouldn't be taking this standing down or lying down. And so this week, the state legislature has put forward a new map with 5 new congressional seats that put in more Democratic voters to even out this play that Texas and Trump are trying to game across the country. So I have on Sam Sukaton, who is our elected Los Angeles member rep to our steering committee and is based out of LA and Inland Empire. He's also a labor organizer and someone who's worked on many campaigns, including Bernie 2020 with me, and someone that knows field very well. And he is a redistricting nerd. So I have him on to talk about redistricting, break it down for all of our listeners who may not know exactly what that is. So Sam, tell us a little bit about what redistricting is and what it means for our listeners.
Sure. Also glad to be on. Thanks, Jane. So redistricting is how we pick who we vote for. So not who we vote for, but how we pick who we vote for. Every 10 years, we have a census in years that end in zero we get a sense of what the population is, what the changes have been. And when we get those numbers, we redraw all of our lines. So when you live in a district, for somebody who represents you in Congress, somebody who represents you on your city council, somebody who represents you on your state senate or your state house, those lines change usually every 10 years after what's called reapportionment. Because as some of you may know, we don't grow our Congress. We don't grow our state legislatures. And so based on how population changes, we slice the pie differently. We draw new and different lines. And that usually happens if the census happens in year zero, years ending in zero, you have reapportionment and then redistricting in years that end in 1. And then the next election is the year that ends in 2. And so it's about a 2-year process every 10 years where we kind of readjust, who governs us.
So we have 52 members of the U.S. Congress here in California. Do we just draw the line so that there are 52 equal geographic districts?
So we draw as close to equal by population as possible. That's the law. But we also draw in compliance with the Voting Rights Act, the Federal and State Voting Rights Act, which mandate that historically disenfranchised communities, African Americans, Latinos, Asian Americans, can elect a candidate of choice. To be clear, that doesn't necessarily mean something is an Asian seat, like a district of Asians is gonna elect an Asian, but that they're able to elect a candidate of their choice. In California, we have a really interesting process. We have what's an independent redistricting commission. Only 8 states have a completely non-politician commission for congressional lines.
And what states are these?
It's California, Idaho, Washington, New York, Arizona, and Colorado, I think. And then New Jersey and Virginia have commissions that are not the legislature, but those commissions can have politicians on them, either all politicians or politicians and non-politicians, random citizens.
So roughly 41 states have politicians determining the congressional lines?
9, because I think it's 11 states total that have a commission. And so 39 have the legislature, and then you're right.
So
and
roughly 30 states allow politicians to draw the congressional lines.
State legislators in particular get to draw their own lines, which is just very bluntly nasty.
That people take into account when drawing these lines?
So at least here in California, we do build our districts on what we call communities of interest. So sometimes this is people who, and this is a basic one, people who live in the same city, people who live in the same neighborhood. Sometimes to get a little more abstract, people who have the same power company, right? The same water, who pay water bills to the same water utility, people who go to school in the same district, people who are served by the same community colleges, by the same K through 12 schools. And then sometimes it gets really weird. One thing that, because I did environmental oriented redistricting, some cities were grouped together by, these are cities that depend on public land tourism. Places like Mono County and Inyo County, where like everyone goes up there for the Eastern Sierra, to go to the mountains, to go hiking, to go skiing. In kind of parts of Los Angeles and San Bernardino, these are folks that have to lock up their trash because they're so close to the mountains that a bear can come down into their trash. So sometimes it gets really weird. And these communities of interest, I think we got like tens of thousands of comments over the course of the 2020 redistricting process from all sorts of directions.
So Sam, tell us why this is such a unique moment in time. So we're not in the normal process at the beginning of the decade where the state legislature or an independent citizens commission starts to draw the lines. This is mid-cycle. So what has been so extraordinary about this moment?
If you are drawing if you are drawing lines in a year that begins like in a year that's not 0, 1, or 2, you've done something very wrong. Historically, that's, we're going to court because a state has violated the Voting Rights Act. In this case, Donald Trump is recognizing that the vibes are off, and went to the Republican governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, and asked for five new House seats. Texas has passed those maps, despite, state legislative Democrats fleeing the state, trying to break quorum so the legislature can't draw. And in response, California's like, okay, you go low, we kick you in the teeth, and we are redrawing our maps. If you're going to try and draw out 5 Democrats, we're going to draw to pick up 5 Democrats.
That was so much drama with the Texas Democrats fleeing their own home state to go to states like Illinois and New York to make sure that the Republicans couldn't meet quorum to redraw the lines. And they left the state for 2 weeks and really shined a light on the gerrymandering that's happening in Texas. So a lot of our listeners, viewers have probably been seeing the word gerrymander in the news a lot. What does gerrymandering even mean? So really basically gerrymandering is, redistricting is when we as voters get to pick our politicians. Gerrymandering is when politicians get to pick their voters. It usually comes, you might hear these 4 words in as practices by which one gerrymanders: cracking, packing, hijacking, and kidnapping. I know that's kind of drama. Let me explain. So cracking is you have a community and you want to break them into different districts so that their voting power can't be concentrated. I live in Koreatown in Los Angeles, and up until very recently, Koreatown was split between 1, 2, as many as 4 city council districts. And so this district, which is very dense, denser than Manhattan in some places, that's mostly renters, small businesses, historically Korean American, kind of very much the heart of the 1992 riots, weren't able to elect a candidate of choice because Koreatown was cracked. Alternately, you can do packing. So if you have a population that you want to keep them from bothering you in your district, you can pile them all into one district. Alabama has one Democratic district because it packs historically African-American counties, mostly in the historic Cotton Belt in the middle of the state, into one congressional district. So you are packed into one district so that other folks don't have to worry about your vote. So that's cracking and packing. Hijacking is drawing 2 people into two incumbents into the same district, so they have to fight it out amongst themselves. So say 2 people have strong relationships in their districts with their voters, drawing their voters together so they feel like they have to compete. So that's hijacking. You're hijacking somebody's voters. And then finally, there's kidnapping, where you have the address of a member and you know where they live and you know that they're tied to their neighbors, to their community, and you separate them from the voters that have historically supported them. You separate them from their neighbors. And you can see this in places. If you look at maps, it's there's this little thing right here. Yeah, you're cutting somebody's house away from the rest of their voters. So again, gerrymandering, cracking, packing, hijacking, kidnapping. And I know I have some American history nerds on here. They're going to say, well, actually, it's gerrymander. I know.
gerrymandering comes from the name of Elbridge Gerry, who was governor of Massachusetts in the 1790s, and kind of the first occurrence of drawing districts in the United States to use a really very technical term, rat fuck one party over another.
I love that. So for anyone that is going to their trivia bar night this week, that is a good piece of fact to take in with them. All right. So what happened in California this week? So we had the state legislature reconvene, and we saw new maps drop that Gavin Newsom and the state legislature worked on. And it looks like it's going to net us possibly up to 5 new Democratic seats. How does that work?
So with the redraw, the legislature submitted a new map that does change a number of districts and creates some new empty Democratic districts where there weren't. So the new 38th, the new 41st, and that also, because a lot of our kind of Republican voters live closer to one another, it actually makes all the districts a little bit more compact. It is actually much more population equal, like the deviation in population's a lot closer than the maps that the commission ended up drawing in 2021 that I lobbied on. And so, yes, we're expecting there are 5 more districts where there is higher Democratic registration and turnout. That doesn't mean that a Democrat's going to win those seats, but it makes it more likely. And I think it was designed, again, like Texas, we're going to remove 5 Democrats. California, cool, we'll pick them up.
Yeah, it has been quite a summer. It has not been boring.
Nope.
And, as we've been following this big fight that Trump has been leading to cheat his way back to Congress, it's great to be in California and know that we can fight back. But it's been a controversial one. And so we'll see what happens. But the great thing here in California is that, unlike Texas, we actually have to go to the voters to decide if we can pass these new maps. The Texas state legislature, as you pointed out earlier, is one of the 39-ish states that can do this unilaterally with just politicians. And so, really taking democracy out of the process. So we'll see how it goes. I think it's crazy that politicians can draw their own lines and decide who gets to vote for them into office. I'm so glad that California has an independent commission. And it's just crazy that we live in a time now where presidents call up their governor friends to change congressional lines to game a system that isn't working for them because their policies aren't popular.
Absolutely. It's filthy. And it's, like I said, if you're drawing in a year ending in 5, something has gone terribly wrong. And this is the broader kind of census redistricting process. It hasn't been this bad ever, right? I think the last thing that is this strange is Congress skipped reapportionment in 1920. They had the census, they had the data, oh no, too many people in the cities, this is going to weaken my power. They just skipped redrawing. They skipped reapportionment, they skipped redistricting. Like something this bad has not happened nationally in 100 years, since before the Depression.
All right, Sam. Well, thank you for joining us today to explain this kind of difficult to understand process for a lot of our listeners and breaking it down. We expect this to go to the ballot on a special election on November 4th. So look out for that. People are going to get a ballot in their homes probably in the beginning of October to vote on this issue and make their say about whether they think this is the right way to move forward or not. But it's great to have you here, Sam. Thank you. Maps are power. As we learned, Texas is pushing a mid-decade redraw, picking up at least 5 new U.S. House seats. And California is now asking voters this fall to temporarily adopt a counter map. Now, I want to bring on someone who has been at the center of this conversation. Working Families Party endorsed Assemblymember Isaac Bryan of Los Angeles, an organizer turned lawmaker who served on a redistricting commission himself before running. So here he is. Welcome, Assemblyman Bryan. Thanks so much for joining us for our first official California Working Families Party podcast. It's so great to have you.
It's really great to be with you.
And you are one of the youngest state legislators. And California has 120 state legislators that represent them throughout the state. And we are the most populous state in the country. And your legislature passes 2 to 3 times as many bills as U.S. Congress on almost any given legislative session. So many could argue that this is one of the most important and relevant lawmaking bodies in the country. And so let's just start from the beginning. What is the state legislature? What do you all do?
Well, so in California, you can think of the state legislature as kind of like our statewide Congress, if you will. And we have a state assembly and a state senate. There are 80 members in the state assembly. There are 40 in the state senate. We pass laws that impact the 40 million people who live in California. We also pass a state budget. It's about $330 billion that funds critical services and infrastructure all across the state. Because of the size and scale of California, the fourth largest economy in the world, our state legislature, I would say, is unique relative to our contemporaries across the country.
So a lot of our friends, folks in our community, they know what Congress is because they get a lot of play in the news. People know what the mayor is, city council is, but not a lot of people think about the state legislature. What made you want to run for state legislature?
I think I really enjoy state policy. The idea that you can impact the lives of 40 million people in a positive way is something that inspires me to get up and get going every single day. I also know that if we do meaningful legislation in California, it has a ripple effect across the country. We are often duplicated, including by Congress and the federal government. And so in my mind, the state legislature is the place to be. I really like policy work. I love people and constituent services. But if you give me the choice, I'm going to opt for the legislation.
Okay, so give me an example of something meaningful that the state legislature does that, anyone could understand.
I'll give you an example right now. We had the largest fires in LA history earlier this year. There were nearly 1,000 incarcerated people fighting those wildfires. They earn about $1 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
We lost 3 of those firefighters in a single fire season a few years ago. That $1 an hour is slave wages to me. I mean, some of those guys are working 24-hour shifts for over 3 weeks on the Eaton fire and other fires. I think they should earn at least federal minimum wage, if not more. And so I've written legislation calling for the state of California to pay these incarcerated firefighters, these heroes, an honest, dignified salary of at least the federal minimum wage. That legislation was funded in the budget. We have a bill that's moving through the legislature right now, and I'm very optimistic that it'll reach the governor's desk and ultimately be signed.
I'm so glad that you worked on the issue. When I realized years ago that, first of all, incarcerated individuals volunteer to fight wildfire in California, and then that we paid them pennies an hour, and there wasn't necessarily a pathway for them to become a firefighter when they were released, I was horrified as someone that benefits from these men and women who go out and volunteer for our state. And so I think that is really meaningful. And it's like a lot of folks don't realize that that's something that the state legislature does. And this was the first office you ran for, right?
This is the first office I ran for.
How old were you when you ran for state legislature?
I was 28 when I launched the campaign. I was elected at 29.
What did your friends say when you told them that you were going to run for state legislature?
Many of them said about time.
Really?
Some, were volunteered. My best friend from graduate school quit his job and jumped in as the campaign manager, and he's now my chief of staff. I think, a lot of people had seen the different ways I was serving prior to being in office as a scholar at UCLA, organizing in community, advising different elected officials, running ballot measures at the county level. I was very involved in the political landscape prior to running for office. And I think at the time, many folks were optimistic that me taking this step was the right thing to do and could benefit the community we come from.
And right now, there's a big fight waging where California is the center of a big national fight that is probably really hard to understand for a lot of people. And you have been front and center at it. So tell me what's happening at the California legislature this week, because you just reconvened session yesterday. So what is happening right now?
We are putting a constitutional amendment on the ballot for this November so that the people of California can decide for themselves whether they want to step into this redistricting fight and save democracy. The president of the United States is willfully cheating and disenfranchising millions of voters in Texas and attempting the same thing in other states, Indiana and beyond. And it's disgraceful. It's also not in line with the values that many Democrats and especially progressives hold in regards to independent line drawing and this idea that district boundaries should not be drawn by the politicians who hold those offices. I agree with that. In fact, I wrote legislation a couple of years ago that called for independent redistricting commissions for all levels of government, cities, counties, special districts, water boards, etc., community college districts, in large part because of what we heard in the LA tapes a few years ago. I was chairing the elections committee. That being said, even though I hold that value, I don't know that there's much of a democracy to fight for if we allow this kind of cheating to go unchecked. And I don't know any other way to check the authoritarian in the White House than to step up with the tools that we have. The courts are not always with us. They have stacked and packed them. They have the House, they have the Senate, and they are rigging this game. I remember before he was in office, he said, if you elect me just one more time, we'll fix it so good, you'll never have to worry about it again. And I am worried about it. And I think that's why we're putting this constitutional amendment on the ballot, because if Californians are as worried as I am, then we will do the right thing and fight fire with fire in this moment.
We have to draw the line somewhere. So might as well be here in California. But why are we going to the ballot when the Texas legislature is just unilaterally making the decision on the maps?
Because we are more honest than they are, because we believe in the people of our state, because we have established an independent commission for nearly 15 years that draws our state lines. We took politicians out of this a long time ago, and nobody wants to reinsert us back in. Not me, not the governor, not the speaker, not the pro tem. What we want to do is bring this back to the voters who ultimately get the final decision. And I think that's the way to do it. I'm actually incredibly excited by the process that we've done. We've brought as much transparency to this as possible. And I believe in the people of California.
So you talked about Texas. How are they actually drawing 5 new Republican seats?
In a very racially targeted way. These are the most segregated maps in the last 60 years. That's not me saying that. That's the Texas legislators who I met with here in Sacramento when they were fleeing their own state, fighting to prevent this from happening. They're the ones who made it very clear to me the disenfranchisement that is happening.
So they're really using Black and brown communities and diluting their vote in order to create these 5 new Republican seats next year.
That is exactly right.
California, it gets to play such a big and outsized role in this country. Very few states have the ability to draw 5 new blue seats the way that Texas does. What do you say to the question, you're just doing what Texas did? It's just the race to the bottom. Why should we participate? We should take the high road. What do you say to folks like that?
I say that they are dismantling the high road right in front of our eyes. And it is not a race to the bottom. Texas is in the gutter. This administration is in the gutter, and they want to take the rest of the country with them. We have to step into this fight because it's the only tools that we have in this moment. And if we don't, we will be spending the next several generations trying to undo the harm coming from the big disastrous bill and the other policies that he will be allowed to move over the next couple of years. If we step into this moment, particularly if we're not alone, there's an opportunity to end this presidency 2 years early because we take back control of the House.
What's the scariest thing to you that has happened in U.S. Congress this year?
I think the scariest thing to me that has happened in Congress is when they took the health care away from people, when they took the veterans benefits away from people, when they came for the social safety nets that so many rely on, when they came for student benefits, when they funded ICE to the tune of $100 billion, making it more powerful than the military of many countries around the world. And they said, we are going to put this on the desk for Independence Day. And he's going to sign it on a 4th of July spectacle. And the fact that they had the power to do this blows my mind. And that's with Elon Musk's opposition, the man that ran the country for the first 4 months of the presidency. He opposed the big, beautiful bill. He was loud about it, and they still were able to move it through and put it on his desk for a 4th of July signing ceremony. That's how much power and control they have over our civic institutions, and we have no choice but to disrupt that.
Okay, Assembly Member, I'm going to ask you one last question, and that is, why are you proud to be a Working Families Party state legislator?
I'm proud to be a Working Families Party state legislator because I think when you center the needs of everyday people, struggling people, working people, that's when you come up with the best policy. The people who are closest to the problems are the people who are often closest to the solutions. And I think the Working Families Party is the closest to the problems of any of the major parties in the present moment.
Assembly Member, thank you so much for being here. I know you have a press conference that you are rushing off to, so I'm just really excited that you could join us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
That's our show. If it helped, please share it with one person who needs the plain English version of this important topic. And join our Discord to keep the conversation going and to suggest topics for future episodes. The link is in the show notes. And follow us, California Working Families Party, on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to do more, DM us and we'll connect you with a local WP member rep to help organize your community or neighborhood. We got more information in the show notes. Rate and follow the show so you don't miss the next episode. I'm Shane Kim, and thank you for listening.